喂，咁多位大家好，我係梁 Sir。啱啱咧，我哋就睇咗唔同類型嘅靈長類，佢哋嗰棵演化樹係點樣噶啦。咁但係嗰棵演化樹究竟我哋點樣畫出嚟嘅咧？我哋點樣去建構到呢一啲靈長類動物嘅系統發展關係，又或者我哋叫親緣關係咧？咁呢一條題目啦，就係考翻我哋啦。究竟用乜嘢嘅辦法去幫我哋建構佢哋嘅親緣關係啦？咁首先啦，我哋就要明白翻啦，究竟如何去建構呢個演化樹咧？第二啦，就係考下我哋究竟有咩嘅證據係可以幫我哋去做到呢個演化嘅研究咧？第三啦，就係去知得到咧，究竟用多重證據嘅重要性點樣可以幫我哋建構到演化嘅生物學嘅？咁我哋嚟做一擊破咯。第一個咧就係去比較翻不同靈長類嘅化石嘅記錄。咁化石記錄咧，的確係可以俾到一個直接嘅證據我哋嘅。咁點解化石記錄係可以話到俾我哋聽啲生物幾時出現呢？首先啦，就係化石嘅次序咧，其實就係由底至高咁樣排嘅。而當中啦，我哋亦都可以再加埋一啲碳檢定嘅方法，例如碳14嘅檢定方法啦，去估算翻佢哋嘅出現時間嘅。咁我哋就可以排到一個次序啦。兼且啦，我哋亦都可以去比較翻不同靈長類佢哋嘅身體結構係咪變得越嚟越複雜呢？從而啦就將佢哋嘅演化排翻一個次序咯。所以第一個方法咧係可行嘅。去到第二個方法啦，就要我哋比較翻不同靈長類嘅 DNA 樣本啦。DNA 樣本咧都能夠知得到究竟佢哋嘅基因上面究竟係幾咁相似或者幾咁唔同嘅。咁當中啦，我哋經過親緣關係嘅概念啦，就係講緊如果佢哋嘅親緣關係越係密切嘅話，咁佢哋嗰個基因嘅組成咧，佢哋嘅 genetic composition 咧，就應該係越係相似嘅。最基礎嘅概念咧，就係睇翻我哋嘅 DNA 樣本嘅 base sequence 嗰個簡基嘅排序就知得到啦。究竟佢哋之間相差咗幾多嘅突變 mutation 咧？咁所以第二咧都係正確嘅。而去到第三咧，就係比較翻不同靈長類一啲關鍵嘅蛋白樣本啦。其實關鍵嘅蛋白樣本咧，同我哋嘅 DNA 嘅樣本測試分析咧，係可以一齊用嘅喎。因為啦，其實 DNA 佢哋個 base sequence 就係控制住佢哋點樣整個 mRNA 信使 RNA， 而 mRNA 當中所擁有嘅 codon 嘅次序咧，其實就係控制住嗰啲蛋白質嘅氨基酸 amino acid 嘅次序。所以運用翻蛋白嘅測試，尤其是一啲高度保留嘅蛋白，即係話大家咧都係會擁有嘅，例如血紅蛋白 hemoglobin 咧，就係其中一款好常用嘅比較嘅蛋白質啦。所以啦，就係透過佢哋嘅 base sequence， 有幾大嘅差異啊，從而又判別下佢哋個氨基酸佢哋嗰個次序究竟又有幾大嘅分別咧，又可以將佢哋排到一個演化嘅關係啦。所以第三咧都係可行嘅。咁亦都把握呢個機會啦，去溫下唔同類型嘅概念啦。除咗化石記錄之外，仲有冇其他嘅證據都係能夠支持到演化嘅理論嘅咧？咁第一個咧就係 homologous structure， 中文咧叫做同源結構。咩叫做同源嘅結構咧？同源結構嘅意思咧就係當我哋觀察唔同生物嘅時候啦，佢哋嘅結構咧，其實望起上嚟佢哋嘅來源係一樣嘅喎。例如呢幅圖咧，都係顯示咗4款哺乳類嘅前輩，人啦、馬啦、蝙蝠啦同埋鯨魚嘅。佢哋個結構其實個來源係一致嘅，但係而家佢哋4隻生物能夠顯示到嘅臂嘅功能咧，佢哋嘅 limbs 嘅 function 咧就唔同晒啦。咁呢個咧就叫做同源結構，就能夠話俾我哋聽咧，話唔定佢哋呢4隻嘢都係由一個共同祖先所去演化而嚟嘅。另一款啦就係比較生物學啦，就係正正第2同埋第3嘅概念啦，就係比較下佢哋個蛋白質入面氨基酸嘅次序啦，同埋 DNA 個簡基嘅排序啦。咁所以答案咧就係1、2、3 D 咯。So after reading the question about the evolutionary tree of the primates, so this question is checking us the concept about the method used in constructing the evolutionary tree, the phylogenetics tree. And then it also checks our knowledge about different types of evidence used in the evolutionary studies. And finally, we need to recognize the importance of multiple lines of evidence in the evolutionary biology. We take a look at the statement one by one. First of all, comparing the fossil field of different pyramids. So the fossil field actually it can provide us the direct evidence of the ancestor and help to establish the timelines for divergency. The sequence of the fossil in sedimentous rocks forms the fossil record. So we can also use the radioisotope dating to estimate the age of the fossil. So we can obtain the information about the time of existence of the organism. That's why we can put them in a correct order. And also we can observe that did the organism become more complex in structure and more diversified. That's why, therefore, number 1 is correct. And then number 2, comparing the DNA samples of the different pyramids. So the DNA comparison can reveal the genetic similarity and difference between the species. Actually, what we are comparing is the base sequence of the organisms, because we assume that if the organisms they are in a closer phylogenetic relationship, they will share more genes. That means their genetic composition will be much more similar. Because we assume that what if the organism they have a closer phylogenetic relationship, they will share more genes, so their genetic composition will be much more similar. So when we are comparing the base sequence of different pyramids, so we can compare the mutation between different organisms and then construct the phylogenetic relationship. So second one is also correct. And for the third one, we can compare the key protein samples from different pyramids. So this method can be used with the DNA analysis to indicate the evolutionary relationship, the phylogenetic relationship. For example, we can compare the amino acid sequence in the highly conserved protein, such as hemoglobin. So why this method can be used with the DNA analysis? Because when we are comparing the DNA base sequence, actually we can compare the mRNA sequence. So for the mRNA, it bears the codon, and for the codon, it determines the amino acid sequence in the proteins. So when we are comparing the base sequence, so the protein amino acid sequence is also a way for us to compare and then to construct the phylogenetic relationship. Therefore, option 1, 2, 3, all of them, they are correct. And I would like to grab this chance to introduce one more concept. What other evidence is there to support the theory of evolution? For the second one, comparative studies looking at the amino acid sequence, just like option 3, and the base sequence of the DNA, just like option 2. So they can be used to show that a high degree of similarity is found in more closely related species. And apart from this comparison, we can also compare the structure, which is the homologous structure. So what does it mean, the homologous structure? So we can observe these 4 structures from the mammals, human being, horse, bat, and the whale. So all these 4 mammals, we can see that the limbs, they share the very similar or even the same structure. However, they perform different function along the time. So actually, this observation can help us to suggest that these species have evolved from a common ancestor. So it is the homologous structure. So we have different ways to construct the phylogenetic relationship.